Class of 2024. Boy, oh boy, where do I even begin? The inside jokes, the lunchtime shenanigans, the late night bonfires and epic paperclip wars. Thank you for all of it. Thank you for being not only classmates, but amazing friends over the past 6 years. Thank you also to our teachers, faculty, staff, for guiding us in our learning and in our development as young men and women. In particular, thank you to Mr. Lee. You've been there every step of the way, as head of school twice, as math, science, and econ teacher, as soccer coach. None of us would be where we are today without you. And most importantly, thank you to our parents for all the sacrifices you've made for us, for showering us in love, and for being our #1 role models. On the last day of classes, Max Cressy said something to me that struck me to the core. As our Humane Letters class reflected on our time at Trinity, he shared that what he'd come to realize over the past 6 years is the value of perspective. He said in as many words that perspective is one of the most valuable things we can gain when approaching a topic or an issue. He went on to say how grateful he was for having been exposed to such a wide variety of perspectives in the books we'd read and in the philosophies we'd studied. Inspired by Max's wisdom, that's what I want to talk about today. Perspective. The different ways people view the world. In particular, I want to talk about the ways we approach new perspectives and conversations with people we might not always agree with. Because the truth is, despite the varying viewpoints we've encountered in the books we've read, we've been living in a sort of bubble for the past 6 years. The people we've interacted with on a daily basis have, for the most part, shared our beliefs. They've seen the world in a fairly similar way. But as we go out next year to San Luis Obispo, to Tampa Bay, everywhere in between, that's not going to be the case. We will meet so many incredible people who see the world in different ways, come from different backgrounds, and who offer different perspectives. We will meet so many people we disagree with, and when we have conversations with them, we often make a choice. A choice between two mindsets that we can have. Now, the first mindset we can have. As many of you may know, I've competed in mock trial for the past 3 years. While I am currently fighting the urge to address you all as members of the jury, I have chosen to represent the first mindset with a common courtroom phrase: no further questions. Now, if you watch any trial, you are bound to hear this phrase at least a dozen times. Every time an attorney questions a witness, they use this phrase to signify the end of their questioning. No further questions. But what's fascinating about this phrase is the power it can hold. After a killer cross-examination, it can be like a drop-the-mic moment. Because in that moment, you're telling the court, your work is done, you've got it all figured out. And implicit in that is that nothing else matters. No other arguments, no other perspectives. And so the mindset I'd associate with that phrase is one of a closed mind. It's one that dismisses new possibilities and closes the door on an issue. No further questions. As for the other mindset, well, if Trinity has taught us one thing, it's that the phrase no further questions ought to stay in the courtroom. Never in our time here have we been instructed to be done with a topic, to close the door on an issue, to stop exploring new possibilities. We've been challenged to do quite literally the opposite. We've been encouraged to keep asking questions, keep engaging new topics, keep letting our curiosity flourish. That's the mindset we've been striving for. And we have a different 3-word phrase for that: sense of wonder. So, members of the class of 2024, we face a critical choice. Either we can approach disagreement with a closed mind, dismiss the other person up front, no further questions, or we can open our mind, have a conversation, engage our sense of wonder. While it may seem an obvious decision, choosing wonder isn't always as easy as it seems. Many times in my life, I found myself caught up in the other mindset. I find someone I disagree with, but instead of listening to them, I instantly close my mind. I hear the words different perspective and translate them in my head to enemy. I say they're wrong, and I immediately commit myself to beating them in an argument. I've let this mentality shape so many of my interactions with others. I've let it get in the way of my relationships and damage my friendships. And looking out into the world in 2024, I'm not alone in this struggle. As a whole, we humans have become fixated on being right. We want to take new perspectives and shove them in a closet, drag them down. If you don't believe me, open up Twitter, turn on CNN or Fox. We polarize ourselves because we become defensive the moment someone disagrees with us. We don't listen to what they have to say, but make our minds up from the onset. So we sacrifice meaningful conversations for premature debates. So how do we choose sense of wonder instead? Well, I would argue there are three things we need to keep in mind. There are three characteristics that have guided us in the classroom that now we ought to take outside Greenlawn's gates. The first characteristic is civility. Every day when we left Humane Letters class, we were still on friendly terms. Even if moments earlier we were going toe-to-toe over serious topics that concerned our faith or political views, you'd find us bonding over an upcoming soccer game or the NBA. Because the truth is, we couldn't let our differences divide us. We couldn't start treating each other as enemies because, simply put, we were stuck with each other. And it is this ability to respect those we disagree with that we must always keep with us. We don't have to be especially close with them, but the moment we see them as enemies is the moment we shut ourselves off. If this becomes our mindset, we will never learn anything new. Sense of wonder allows us to have healthy conversations and disagreements. Now, the second thing we must always keep with us is intellectual honesty. What do I mean by that? Well, in his dialogues, Plato denounces the sophists, who take bogus claims and then deduct reasoning to support them. And it's tempting to work backwards in this way. You want something so badly to be true, so you come up with some way of justifying it. And especially today, where our attention is being pulled by so many sources on social media and elsewhere, it's easy for us to find what we want to be true and to latch onto it. We see what we want to see, we hear what we want to hear, and in this echo chamber, we convince ourselves that we've got it all figured out. No further questions. Fyodor Dostoevsky warns against this. He writes, "Above all, don't lie to yourself. The man who lies to himself and listens to his own lie comes to a point that he cannot distinguish the truth within him or around him, and so loses all respect for himself and for others." So what instead? Do our due diligence. Consider every possibility. Let the evidence lead to a conclusion, not the other way around. That's why we've read not just John Locke, but Karl Marx and Thomas Hobbes. That's why in math class, we often derived our formulas instead of just receiving an answer. We've traced our beliefs to the foundations. We've come to understand the basis of our perspective, so that now when we encounter other perspectives, we can explore them with a curiosity to build our understanding. As we do this, we may still disagree, but we identify the root of our disagreements and maybe some similarities as well. Sense of wonder allows us to consider new possibilities and plunge into the nuances of an issue. This leads me to the third element of a healthy disagreement, humility. This has proved the most difficult for me because sometimes I'll be having a discussion and all of a sudden I realize, wait, the other person, they're kind of onto something. And when this happens, it can be difficult to admit it, especially when it contradicts something I've said. I found myself getting defensive, turning to insults, trying to deflect the conversation to something else. And on the flip side, when the other person finds themselves in that position, I struggle not to hold it over them, to show my power. See, I got you. I told you so. Since I struggle with this, I decided to talk to a priest about it in confession. And what he said in reply, I don't think I'll ever forget. He said, "Son, I want you to think of Christ on the cross." He said, "That is the ultimate example of not having to be right all the time." And I was taken aback by this because I had never thought about that way before. Here was the King of the universe being humiliated, being mocked, being killed, and he knows more than anyone else in the world how right he is. He has the ability to come down from the cross to prove himself, but he doesn't. As Paul would later write, he shows us to boast only of our weaknesses because his power is made perfect in weakness, and he shows us in that moment what true power is. So when we have these conversations and we end up rethinking our views, or the other person does, we must not revile that humility. It isn't a loss for anyone. No, it's a major victory for both sides. Because now everyone walks away with a better understanding of a topic and a better appreciation for the varying perspectives on it. Sense of wonder allows us to enhance our understanding of the world. Class of 2024, we are on the edge of coming into adulthood. We face new opportunities and mysterious possibilities. Let's not shy away from that unknown, but embrace it. Let our curiosity fuel us to engage new topics and encounter new perspectives. Let our sense of wonder grab hold of us and guide us along our path, that we may come to know more fully the truth, beauty, and goodness of God's creation. God bless you, and go Titans. Thank you.